Welcome to the School of Animation and Visual Effects panel discussion for the critically acclaimed film No Estoy Aqui, or I'm No Longer Here. We'll speak to the film's producer, as well as some of the StudioX faculty and students that incorporated visual effects into this film. I'm No Longer Here has already made an impact at film festivals and has won a number of Ariel Awards. It tells the story of Ulysses, a teenager who is forced from his home and culture to the streets of New York City. We'll discuss a bit of that story, as well as the development, production, music, visuals, and visual effects. I'm No Longer Here is currently streaming to view on Netflix. What I really like about it is that it's both a kind of a grand story and a very small personal story at the same time. Like, we travel a great distance, but we're focused on just Ulysses, right? He'll be around a lot of people, but very, kind of, at least in America, very kind of to himself and kind of I guess lonely is an appropriate word for parts of the movie, right? So, so how do you how does a story get developed like that, where you have to tell this big story and this small story at the same time?
So a lot of Fernando's themes that he's interested in his movies have to do about being sort of a fish out of water. Rosetta, his first film, was sort of like that. And there was another documentary. It was kind of like a travel documentary that he made. And a lot of that, when he's spoken about sort of his personal side, it sort of harkens back to how he traveled a lot as a kid. His mom sort of works in the airline industry. So he experienced that firsthand, not only as a kid, but also when he came to the United States and studied at Columbia, which is where I met him. And there were these themes that he's just always been interested in. And specifically in regards to this story, he was really fascinated with the Colombiano subculture because it was such a weird, unique, eccentric subculture that sort of evolved during one of the most dangerous times. And he was surprised how a movement like that sort of emerged in such a violent time. But what he also was really keen on was there are not many unique subcultures left from his perspective that are in the world right now. Everything's been so globalized that a lot of these subcultures, once they pop up, they immediately become assimilated into something larger. And he wanted to capture something in this brief moment of time. And it also necessitated a sort of look into how immigration plays between Mexico and the United States. And one of the things that interested me most as a producer and as a filmmaker was his unique take on immigration. And a lot of immigration narratives really focus on coming from sort of a place with less financial means or places that are more marginalized and going to the United States where, it's the American dream. You're making a better life for yourself. Me being sort of the son of Korean immigrants, I sort of witnessed firsthand that, yes, I mean, there are those aspects of my parents' immigrant narrative, but there are also times where you witness this really intense alienation and loneliness that, like, after you leave a country that you're so familiar with, that you grow up with, that was home to you, and then you go somewhere completely different, it can be very harrowing. And a lot of immigrant stories, while they kind of touch upon that, really don't do a sort of an emotional deep dive into what that feels like. And when Fernando and I were sort of talking about this film, we realized how important that it was, not only from our own personal experiences, but also interviewing the non-actors that we were looking to cast in the film. And we realized how harrowing some of those stories were. And we couldn't fit those all in, but there are sort of elements that we sort of pick at and sort of try to incorporate into some of Ulysses' stories or some of Lynn's story or some of the other people in the film.
Yeah, I think it's something that's really important because we don't see a lot of stories like this. And I think it's really going to speak to a lot of people in America that, or around the world, certainly in Mexico, but other countries. But even in America, I think there's a lot of people here who don't get to see that story told.
Yeah, and for me, I like how they edit. It's kind of like cross editing between like the character in Mexico and in New York. It's like cross editing between these two places, and it kind of like reflects my feelings, like what I feel in the U.S. because I'm also come from like Taiwan and to another country and here to study and to learn to pursue my dream. And it somehow is like, and you will miss your hometown so much, like your family, your friends, and all the kind of things that you're familiar with. Yeah, so it kind of like relates to my own experience.
I think the story is really touching, but it's different with my life. So I feel like the boy living in a different country. I feel the same with Hank, but actually, yeah, I cannot really understand like they are feeling.
Like no matter how crazy or how seemingly dangerous, I mean, that's completely a subjective thing, but your home it's still home to you. And it's so important to identify like where people come from, because just because you think that they're coming to the United States for a better life, it's not their home. It's like there's a piece of that their identity that they had to give up in order to come here. So
I think that one of the most important things I noticed about the film was the community that he had that was robbed. He was robbed of. And not only was he robbed of that community, that he was pretty much a leader of. I mean, he was a leading force in that community. Plopped into New York City, does not speak a lick of English. He's a teenager, so he's in that age where already like things are so hard and you're transitioning into another place. And the way the teenagers tend to deal with it is they're just quiet and withdrawn.
yeah.
To me, that was the most powerful part of the movie, is feeling his pain and his isolation. But there's, like what Will was saying, there's no dialogue. It's just you're able to catch that. And this is an actor that has never acted before.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
How were you able to get that kind of performance?
Well, just knowing from the casting process and witnessing from afar what he had to go through, they had to sort of bring in, you know, an inordinate amount of kids to sort of audition for the part. And I know that when we were sort of finalizing our casting down to a couple, obviously Fernando was really concerned about how things would look in close-up, because it's so much, like you said, can be communicated in just sort of these micro gestures. You know, one scene that I think about is when Ulysses is with Lynn on the rooftop, and she has this friend with them, and they're trying to, things are getting lost in translation.
Mm-hmm.
You really sort of lean on, there are other versions of the edit where we cut a lot more back and forth between Lynn and Giovanni, Lynn's friend, who's translating. But we later realized it was so important just to stay on Ulysses and sort of see him absorb and really trying to figure out what these kids are saying to him. And Derek is just he's just naturally gifted. I don't know how else to say it. And like everybody sort of recognized that when they watched the film. And as you probably know, he won sort of an emerging actor award in the Ariel. And that's the equivalent of like the Oscar here in the United States. So, I mean, everybody's sort of recognized how talented this kid is, and he's going to be going on to do bigger and better things. Fernando also comes from a documentary background. His first film also dealt with non-actors, but with a lot of documentary filmmakers, you're sort of trying to learn with your characters sometimes on the fly, and there's a lot of improv that goes on behind the scenes. And I think coming from a documentary filmmaking background, you always have to be on your toes and sort of recognize when there are those moments of magic. And if you see something, you have to just go for it rather than rely on your script or rely on things that you've pre-planned before the shoot. And I see people who don't come from a documentary background who sort of allow those moments to vanish. Whereas people who come from the documentary world, if they see something right away, they know they have to sort of work around it just to get that magic moment. So
yeah, you have to be more flexible and improvisational for sure.
for sure.
For the producers and visual effects people, is like, how much do you really know about the story when you go into it? Like, is there stuff you have to know? Is there stuff you're not allowed to know?
That's a great question. It kind of varies from production to production. With this particular film, I think they were still in edit, so we didn't see a rough cut as we were starting to work on it. But we were really given a great synopsis of what the film was about. And the clients actually got on the phone with us on Zoom several times and walked us through what was actually going on in the scenes. So that just as with actors is that we were getting the motivation and understanding what the context of each of the shots were, the sequences, so that we could really establish the look and the visual effects to really help that story move forward.
I think one thing is because we don't work in every single shot of this movie. So we just only knew like briefly about like the beginning of the story, how it's end up with 2 locations. And obviously we know about the location because some of our work also relate on that location. Like we have to create a background of these specific location in some typical shot. Yeah.
Even people who only know a little bit about visual effects, they know that the job is to be consistent to the director's vision. Describe what that process looks like from your role.
This might be overstating the obvious, but obviously making sure everything's communicated super clearly. And sometimes that involves, getting other visual references or even other films, just so that there's really there's like no room to sort of have you guys as visual effects artists guess to what we're thinking. And I think the biggest mistake that I've seen with other filmmakers is that when they under communicate something, they just assume the visual effects person can get inside their heads. And what that does, it makes things a whole lot worse and inefficient. And as a producer, that makes me and my job a lot more frustrating, is like when there's inefficiencies. So as much as from my process as a producer, I always try to get as much information as possible and download that information to the people who are trying to execute it. So
for me, I mean, I've been in this business for almost 30 years. So, and especially with independent filmmakers that are, it's so story driven. I know that a lot of people would disagree with that statement, but to me, why I love indie films is because it's a story. And so being in the business so long, both on big blockbuster movies and on indie films, which are my love. Our job is to fulfill the vision of the filmmakers and the story. And if we can do that seamlessly, it's not about us, it's about the story, and it's about the collaboration and the collective energy that comes from a script that's been written, a filmmaker that has a vision. We want to bring ourselves to the table as much as we can to fulfill that vision, fill the director and the producers and the filmmakers' vision. So luckily, there is some creativity for us to get to that end. So it's not just like we're drones doing nothing, but especially with students who haven't established their role as a designer or as an art director. Like, we are a team. This is the experience we want to give you as a student, because you're not going to get that if we don't have this type of environment for you. And that's why it's groundbreaking in terms of education, is that we're throwing you into the environment in a safe way that you'll be hopefully going into when you're a professional, and getting you closer to that goal. So being able to make sure that that communication and collaboration process is as smooth as possible. And with Fernando and Gerry, they were wonderful communicators. So, and they gave us everything we asked for. So that's why the process went so smoothly and was so good for the students. And then they see the result and they see the context and they understand it and they realize this is something bigger than me. This is something bigger than me, larger than me, but I contributed to it.
When we do this project, because the crew is a really professional crew and they answer email really fast and always give us feedback in time and quickly. And before we started, they gave us a handoff sheet. They show us the example they want. And all the examples are really clearly. I think it's really important to get the version they want.
Yeah, I think the most important roles in this thing is producer, because she's the one that keep contact and like keep in touch with whatever the director wants and needs and create a meeting and things. So to make sure that our visual effects is exactly what the director needs.
Yeah, I think it is all about the communication between our side and director side.
The long shot in the bus station, they want to change the sky, the color of the sky, and we give them I think two versions.
Few tests, yeah.
Yeah, and they finally get a meeting with us and talk about that, and finally they want to give us like, I think we separate the sky and the foreground, and they can change the sky during the editing.
So it's like we give them like a multiple version, like the darkest, the brightest, and the middle one, so they can just like adjust whatever they want. Yeah.
So having flexibility and giving options to them seems really important too. You're kind of leading into my next question, which is, things like sky replacement or day for night changing color. A lot of them, they're very invisible because it's a drama. Movies that aren't superhero movies, aren't big action movies, but are very, personal dramas or even historical dramas. Talk about the differences of doing visual effects for movies like that.
What's interesting about what we do, what most visual effects are, aside from like the Avengers Endgame kind of extravaganzas, is that we're really adding into the composition in the picture to bring attention, to certain aspects of the shots or the sequences. But then also, if we're not able to do it in reality, that we're really able to, compose shots, especially like with the radio station of just, putting the background in, giving it that location. And really it's, people wouldn't notice it. And we don't want people to notice these kinds of things. We just want the suspension that it just looks like any normal shot. And these kind of visual effects are always, to me, the most beautiful, because I think some people just don't even realize that there's a visual effect there. And that's really what we're going for. We want them to be invisible and to be seamless.
I just like the whole idea personally of the subtlety of letting the story be told and serving the story. So that's why I love independent film. And that's why I love my job, because I was able to sort of carve out the perfect job for me, because, to me, being a visual effects supervisor on a film that's very story heavy, that has some emotional impact, that might be socially conscious rather than just pure entertainment value, is hugely appealing to me. I mean, we work with a diverse group of filmmakers I actually went after this one because I just think the diversity of and the inclusion of working with all these different filmmakers from all over the world, along with the diversity of our student body, I feel like we have something super special, and that we're actually breaking ground. We're even moving further ahead than the industry. We're like, in terms of working with real life people and stories. So for me personally, I know that's not my mission statement in terms of, you know, our mission statement is get the students jobs, right? Get them professionally ready. We do that, but at the same time, we're doing something special in that we're working with filmmakers from all over the world, telling a diverse group, a diverse amount of stories that generally have some sort of social meaning to them. And that what we're doing is we're basically collaborating with them so that their story has more impact, or that it gets across to the audience. And so to me, that's my passion personally. And that's what I love about it. But, you know, you're not going to be like, you know, it's not like you're making a Transformer or you're working on a Marvel film and where your visual effects are like very much up front. Okay. So for us, they're very much transparent. And I think that type of training too is the mindset I want the students to be in, even when they're working on a blockbuster film.
You know, it's a balance of, you know, putting in the effect, but also having it be subtle. They may be having an emotional reaction and they might not know why. Because even there was one where he's cleaning his shirt and there's blood on it, and we needed to add some more blood in. And of course, we don't want it to be like blood soaked, and we don't want it to be just little bits of it there. It's like we want to add enough where the audience sees it, and but it's part of the full composition of what is the character is actually going through in the moment.
So part of what's involved in that, of course, and I think is depicted really well for people who haven't experienced or lived it, is that there's a lot of like language barrier going on in certain specific scenes, and then it becomes an issue. But that made me realize while I'm watching it that you have to communicate more with the visuals as well. Yeah. So while sound is very important, the music I'm going to ask about too, because it's awesome. But when you have to do that, what do you keep in mind for audiences when you plan out those shots and sequences?
Yeah, it was one of the things that Fernando was very keen on from early on was not to tell another sort of handheld, gritty, neo-realistic story. I mean, we don't look or condescend towards those films because both he and I really love some of those movies, but stylistically he wanted something that was very composed, where the frames, there's movement within the frame, but not a lot of like camera movement. And he just wanted to capture like these vast environments in Monterey, which if you didn't notice, a lot of it's shot in wide. And in New York, even though New York is always portrayed as sort of like a big, you know, sprawling city, he wanted it more contained and even claustrophobic just because of the feeling that character is going through. So visually, everything was incredibly intentional from shot to shot to shot. And from my perspective as producer, that made things easier for us because it meant less setups, and it made shooting on set a lot more efficient. And when directors come and say, I don't need to shoot coverage, it's sort of, I love hearing that because it means that there's like a more efficient route that the director is trying to take in telling the story.
One thing that, and Catherine, this would be a good question for you as well. One thing that's really impressive, I think, I love long takes. And I like when they're not gratuitous or pointless, like they have a good point in the story, which these all do, because we're following this very personal story. But that can make visual effects harder because now you have one long shot as opposed, or a series of long shots. So why don't you tell me a little bit about the planning for that, just on the, producing and visual effects side, like the planning side of it?
So part of this was kind of a learning process for me and Fernando, was trying to figure out like what assumptions we were making about the process were correct and what assumptions were false. So
I would say that it's interesting that we would be your first experience, because we're not really a studio, we're a school, but we have a pretty robust program that that we've been very successful with. And I will say that with indie films, we often get super long shots, more than studios do, mainly because the expense of like, they always are trying to trim these shots because they're complicated and expensive. So like the types of shots we do in StudioX, we're used to doing long shots, which is funny because, and I thought that this show went really efficiently. It may still seem slow because we're not on a 40-hour week, and it's not like being in a studio where you're getting people working like 24/7. But this show went really efficiently, I think. And we kind of love being part of the storytelling process.
The big scene is in the shots is really when it's the gang warfare drive-by, which is, it's an upsetting shot, and it's supposed to be, and it's a very long shot as well. And so what was wonderful was that we were really able to meet with them on several occasions, so that he could really walk us through the full drama of it, and so that we could really get the feel for it. So it always, in production, in filmmaking, it always comes down to communication. It is such a social art form, and having those conversations and really getting the visceral impact, but really just making sure that we're giving a sense of realism, that we're also giving a sense of the drama of it, without being gratuitous and overly violent. And so there's always that kind of cutoff of just like, does that feel realistic, and are you getting the dramatic impact on it? The directors also timed it in a way for the drama and for it to unfold in a way for the audience, so we get the most emotional impact.
What was it like working with a visual effects team like this, especially with students? And did you learn from that process?
Yeah, I mean, this was one of the first big projects that I've worked on with a visual effects team on this kind of scale. I come from a documentary background, so I'm accustomed to doing some like motion graphics here and there as inserts, but not to sort of reshape visually certain scenes. Like, for example, like the Amazing Riot scene that you guys did at the end. It's just, I can't get over how great that looked, especially, I mean, I'm going to be completely frank, because when when the film premiered at Morelia, it was one of the first things I was going to look out for, just to see how good it looked. And it looked incredible on a big screen. And I was just so blown away at the type of work that you guys did. So for us, I've dealt with this sort of kind of workflow in the past, even though it might not have been sort of the exact workflow, but the type of communication and handing things off and making sure things were communicated properly. Like in all my previous things that I've done, it's always best to over communicate than to under communicate. And that was some hard lessons that I learned on some other projects. So I made sure going into this that we sort of laid out everything that we needed to, we wanted from you guys. So
what are some creative choices then, knowing that it was that kind of story? Like, do you have as much flexibility with the creativity on a movie like this, or, or as opposed to a movie where there's
not that much, I would say, because mostly everything that we're gonna put in basically from the client, because sometimes there are like, they ask for a graphic or some like something to cover up the poster or something like that. We don't even create our real poster, like our own poster. We just ask them back for them to provide us all the art things so we can put it in our work. So basically compositing in this films, or maybe most of the films, we don't really have like an art room to create things. So because our job is to composite and to have to get everything that we have and put it onto the work. But mostly of the creativity from this role is basically gonna be like how we're gonna achieve that look, how like technically, which way that we're gonna do anything to like complete the shot. That is more of like the creativity of the way we did it, but not actually like the artwork or something like that.
For me, I think I have a little room to the creative decision because I made a scene. That scene is like blood and a shooting scene. So I kind of like I can create like how the blood will splat on the wall and all the things like yeah, something like that. It's a little creative things involved in this scene.
So when you have an explosion or blood splatter, you get to be creative.
Yeah, like what kinds blood I want to look at here, and what kinds of like a little sparks around here. So, but also under the creative decision like this, we still like have to have the director to like to see how what he wants and what he wants to look like the blood the blood here is too big or he wants to be smaller, like yeah, something like that.
I think with these, especially the shots that we did, they may be so subtle, but I feel like because we were able to help them, it just helped their story move it forward. They probably there was some shots that maybe it could have they could have gone without, but I feel like it's in the drama of it. Those small little details really make a difference. I mean, even just the shot of just the stabilizing the bridge shot with them walking across what it does is that it stabilizes it so the viewer is looking at the characters and they're going through that emotional journey with them, and they're not getting distracted by the camera jiggling, and that's important. I mean, they're really small things, but I feel like the drama of the film really needed just these little tweaks to make it that much better.
So do you each have a favorite shot?
Kind of like the shot that I didn't do.
Yeah, yeah, I really like Hank's shot. The gun shooting part. It's really good.
I love Hank shots so much.
Yeah, me too.
I like it too, but it's like it's a pain in the ass to while you're doing it. But the outcome is really good, I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's really good. It looks really amazing.
it's
That's
really.
why I love it.
Oh, thank you.
And also the last shot, the people running on the street, that shot is also good. Yeah, that one I think that one has some creative there, because at the beginning when we see that shot, we have two plans for that. One is the CG people, and the other is, I think it's 2D, right? We finally decided to use 2D.
No. So finally, we actually used 3D. We actually used CG on that shot.
Oh, it's really CG. Okay, but we make two plans, and we let the director decide which one they want.
Yeah.
And I think they make two versions.
Good.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, I didn't notice that is a CG if I don't know that was a CG.
Yeah. When I see the final shot, I really cannot say CG part.
It's always going to be the last shot just because of how grand a scale it was and how important like the visual information was to the audience emotionally as well, because there's just a lot of things going on that without a proper execution, an audience wouldn't buy that feeling at the end. And it's just, this is how we end the film. So you have to absolutely make sure that it's done correctly. And you guys did an incredible job with that. So
tell me about the music. This is not, this culture and this music is not something that most people are aware of. So just your impressions on that, learning about it and bringing it to life.
Yeah, I mean, I had no familiarity with it coming into the film. From what I understand, cumbia music, the origins are from Colombia, and for whatever reason, that specific subculture decided to assimilate it into sort of their own musical tastes. And one thing that ended up happening is that there are different mythologies about how the music got slowed down. Sometimes people explain it as sort of the battery running out on like their boombox, or people sniffing glue and sort of interpreting the music in a different way. But for whatever reason, thematically, it works so well within the context of the story, given sort of the movie is about time and holding on to your youth and holding on to your place and not wanting to let go of that. And sort of the music expresses that in a way that dialogue or visuals completely can't. And one thing I thought about last night before the call was how much music plays with your memory, and it sort of assigns you to a time and place. Like if you think about like the first song that you like listen to that you affiliate with your first crush, or like just even childhood memories, anyone can recall a specific song that sort of brings you back to that time and place, whether if it's a happy time or a sad time. And that music in this film definitely does that. And I think it's especially important given sort of the themes of the film about migration, about identity. I think it underlines all of those themes that we're trying to get at. Congratulations on the Ariel Award. What was it like? What did it feel like? Tell us about that experience of that happening. Oh boy. So this production has been a roller coaster ride, to say the least. I mean, I started on this, I think, back in 2013, 2014. So it's been a long ride. And with any independent film, especially independent films that deal with social issues and that deal with subjects that aren't quite familiar to sort of the bigger public, it can be very hard, obviously, to raise finances for projects like these. And it takes an extraordinary amount of stamina, emotional, mental, and I give Fernando all the credit in the world for him to have lasted and pushed this long. I mean, he really believed in the film, and so did I. But he's the one who came up with the idea and executed it directorially. But I think because of the ups and downs, it was not only in making the film and getting film greenlit and then finishing the film. There were hurdles in getting Derek's visa to come to the United States. He was rejected two times before finally he got the third time okay from the Mexican consulate. So there were so many times where it felt like the film wasn't going to happen, or it wasn't going to get completed. And but somehow we just kept pushing through it. And then when we were applying to film festivals, we were always sort of one of the last few to be on the short list, and then we wouldn't get in. And then finally Morelia got in, and then that sort of set off a momentum. And then it was just such a long process and period and we faced so much uphill climb that when we finally were awarded, it was genuinely shocking that the film had hit this type of nerve in Mexico and that it resonated the way it did. I mean, that was not expected at all, given sort of the context of what I just explained of how steep the uphill climb was. It's like you just wanted just to get to the top where you finished and released it out to the film, and whatever happened, that was just gravy. But I think we're still sort of in shock about the response. And a video was released with Alfonso Cuarón and Guillermo del Toro sitting down and doing an interview specifically about this film, talking about how important Fernando as a filmmaker is. And it's a completely surreal thing to see two filmmakers that you completely admire talk about a film that you didn't think was going to see the light of day several years ago. So, and I think I think a lot of independent filmmakers who go through the similar struggle probably can feel the same way, just because there's so much struggle and so much stamina that takes to get, just to make, finish, and distribute the film, that by the time the awards, and if you're blessed enough like we are to get sort of the recognition, it's sort of, it's kind of becomes surreal. You can't believe what's happening. You just sort of accept that it's happening, but logically it doesn't make sense. And that's sort of what it feels like right now for us.
And I kind of agree that it's the gravy. That's not why you're doing it, really. I mean, you're doing it because you want to do it, and it's kind of like a nice reward at the end. And yeah, we're really proud to have been a part of it.
I have recommended you guys to everybody that I know. San Francisco Film, Cinereach, Sundance. I have written long emails.
Thank you.
You guys. So I hope that it brings in more work. But thank you again.
I'm just glad that we reached out and that you listened and that you tried. You took a chance on us. You know, I know it's a big gamble, and I'm glad it worked out. We were so thrilled to be nominated. We had no idea. So talk about a big surprise. And you know, the film is brilliant. It's a beautiful piece of art, and I'm just so happy we played a very small part in it. And congratulations on all of the success you guys have gotten on it, because you deserve it.
Thank you so much.
I think what's important about StudioX, and really the idea behind it, and you know, why Catherine created it, and why, you know, I'm aboard, and we've really kind of built it out, is that we really feel it's important for students to not only learn the art piece of it and understand how to do the things, to do the animation, to do the lighting, to do the compositing, to do the things. But what they need to learn is, how does those things fit into this bigger picture? And bigger picture, meaning the full film, the full feature, and how that, even if it's a small little detail, how much that improves the way the story is being told. And the only way for students to really understand that, and what we give them with this program, is that they can see their piece in this bigger whole, and really have an understanding that it does take a village. It does take a small metropolis to make a film happen, and that they're part of something that's greater than just the one shot that they're working on. That they're actually part of a community of artists, that we're also a community of artists that are supporting the director's vision and their commentary, which is very important to Catherine and I in terms of the projects that we agree to work on, is that we want to make sure that it's adding to the diaspora of the story of us, really, and really being able to support the directors that may not be able to have not have the accessibility to these kind of things. And so I think it really helps support both filmmakers and storytellers, but then it also helps our students really get an idea of the importance of their work, even if it's very small.
When Sasha and I bring in projects, our heart is in it. So I would say that's where it starts, is our heart is with the students and our heart is in the project. So with that, you've got a guardian that is putting more passion into the work and sharing that with the students. The students may not share that passion. You know, a lot of our students want to work on the Marvel films, but I think eventually it's part of the training, and it's worked in kind of transparently that we are in it and we are putting our heart and soul into them and the project. I mean, I'm still comping shots. I'm comping a shot today just because there are problems and we got to get through it. So our objective is for training the students is there's no better way, because my heart is in it and I'm going to go beyond what just a normal instructor would do, right? So, and we're working closely together like an internship, right? So to me, yeah, that's it's like everything gets done in a good way, even though it just works as a method to train them, because you've got the guardians, you know, you got Sasha and I with our hearts in it, and Jason's, and we care. We're bringing in projects we care about, and eventually, I think, with experience, some of the students will appreciate these times when they look back, because they're working directly with the filmmaker and the director. They don't often get to do that. They're working on real projects, and they have even a lead role. So our objective is to train the students and get them production ready. But at the same time, we're helping with art. We're helping get a story told that is meaningful, that we care about. So I don't know how I was so lucky to, I mean, I know part of it was intention. You know, I had an intention in order to be able to love my job and continue to have passion for it. You know, working on these films is definitely a big part of it, but it helps me make me better teacher.
Just get into StudioX, please.
I would say for compositor, you have to like join StudioX.
Yeah.
But I think also as CG modeler or something, their work will have composed into a real project. It's really, I mean, also good for them.
Yeah. Like I really like the way that StudioX actually give us a real world job. Like we have an actual task and actual work with the real client. The films that actually like went on viral and get in Netflix like this, it's the thing that we're not gonna get if we don't get into StudioX.
What was interesting about this project, and what I was actually really proud of, is it came in mid-semester, and usually we try to start projects, you know, at the very beginning, and usually we have, you know, we'll do the whole semester and work and deliver shots at the very end of the semester. But they were on a really tight deadline, and you know, it was definitely, we had to retool the studio to get the shots done and out and at a quality that was expected. But what was really cool is that the team that we had on, Nana and Jaja and Hank as our leads, they were very dedicated to it, and they really wanted it to succeed. And so they really took and put in the extra effort to make sure that that happened. And then all of the other artists that were working on shots, they were very supportive of. And so it really took a very short time, concentrated effort to get it out. But everybody was so into it that they did everything that they could to make it successful. And to me, that's the beautiful thing, because it's like they really believed in the project itself, but they really believed that, you know, that they could deliver in the time frame. Even though I was a little skeptical, I'm always like playing the devil's advocate, but they were assuring me, no, we can do it, we can do it. And so just for us to actually get through that, and then have Gerry and Fernando, you know, give us have the faith in us, that was the best part.
On this particular project in StudioX, like, what did the typical day look like? Like, do you guys have fun? Like, what's actually happens when you go in to work on this project, you know, during a random day?
Get more intense.
Yeah, because this is really fast turnaround.
Because imagine if you just take a class, like a normal class, it's gonna be just an every week homework. That's it. But in this project, it's like entire project. It's in a particular small and intense deadline.
Yeah.
And we have to make it professionally. We have to communicate professionally. We have to done it in a professional quality.
and deliver online on time.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that is a thing that we get from working in this project in the StudioX. It's like to practice to work in a real world. Yeah, that's what I get from the StudioX.
Yeah, for me, I will say like StudioX is like a real studio like in the industry, because we really bring in like outside the real project in the StudioX to do. So yeah, I think the StudioX really helps out uh, to build up your portfolio, because you have the real shots to do, especially for the composer, because we all have to like collaborate with others, because a composer is like in the very bottom line, the very last person to deliver the shots. So I think StudioX really helps out. Yeah.
I mean, if you just take the class, all the project you've done is by yourself. You're shooting the material, you get the idea by yourself, and you compose that together. It's all by yourself. I mean, the most important I think StudioX can give you is how to cooperation and communicate with other artists. That is really important in the job, and especially for composer. The last, like Hank say, it's the really bottom part in the visual effects workflow. And I think it's good is when you really work in a real world job, you can know how to communicate to others. That is really important. You can need to, the people around you are all composer. Like, because my major is in compositing, people around me are all composer. And you have to know how to talk with modeler, tell them what you need, what channel you need them render, what they should give to you. That is good part to learn. And you will really use that in the job, during working or something. And for the producer, I mean, talking to your teacher is different to talk to your client. When I talk to the client, Sasha and Catherine teach me a lot is how to show you're professional, because only you show you're professional, the client will trust you and they will believe you can finish the job they give to you. That is the best part StudioX teach me.
Fun to make things that is not there to be there. and make people feel like it's real. It's like tricking people. Like, I trick you, find my work in this shot. Try to find my work, and people like, did you do this? Did you do this? And no, it's not. So that feeling is like, okay, that's amazing. Yeah, so I like that kind of thing. I like to like putting some fake thing or removing things out of an actual play, an actual footage, and make people feel like they don't even notice about that, and that is a good feeling.
Yeah, it's like you are being the magician to like playing magic with the image in the film or in like TV shows. Yeah, it's kind of like all those things has the visual effect, and all it needs compositing in it to like make the thing become real or making the thing disappear. Yeah, it's like playing magic.
Yeah, just like what I said, I just like the feel, the shot delivered from my hand, and you will see exactly the same shot in the theater. That is yeah. I just want to see the exactly same from mine and to another, and people will see, oh, that shot is good. I can say, yeah, that is what exactly. And
what advice would you give to students who are now where you were just 2 or 3 years ago?
Get into the StudioX, please.
yeah.
just get in there, spend a lot of time in there, and do as good as you can in there. It's gonna give you a lot of opportunities. Like, it's not just only the time when you in the Studio X, but after that, you're not gonna know. Sometimes people around you, they're gonna give you an opportunities after you graduate. Who knows? Because everyone's gonna go into the professional world. And if you do your best in there, communication best, work best, it's gonna give you just only thing, like, is a best future.
Yeah, the network in a Studio X is really important because you don't know when you need help for your like final thesis, or maybe after that, maybe your friends in the Studio X can introduce you to their studio and you have the interview, you got offer. Yeah, so I think work hard, be responsible for you, what you, the role you're playing is really important.
Yeah, you will meet a lot of people in StudioX with different talent, and they will help you future someday.